Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode on my Road to Superman thing. So, today we are reviewing Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. I have seen both versions of Superman 2, but the one I watched for this one was the Donner cut, which, in my opinion, might be the better version. I think it is the better version, the Donner cut. I don't hate the theatrical cut of Superman 2. I think there's some dumb stuff in Superman 2, but there's some dumb stuff in this one too. But when I rewatched Superman 2, this is the version that I watch. I had watched Superman 2, the theatrical version, before when I was very little. That was like before the Donner cut came out, right? And then after the Donner cut came out, that's been the version I watched, right? So here we go, Superman 2. I really like here in the Donner cut how much more tighter the story is and how much more it ties into Superman 1. Case in point being they re-show General Zod, Ursa, and Non being sentenced to banishment in the Phantom Zone by Jor-El. So they show that, and then they show that after Superman diverted the missile from the first movie up into space, that's what broke them out of the Phantom Zone, which doesn't work, right? Comical lore-wise, that doesn't work. That's not how the Phantom Zone works. But whatever, for this movie, sure. At the Daily Planet, Lois is now more suspicious that Clark is Superman, and she tries to test that theory by jumping out of a window. So this woman is insane. Clark's like, well, I'm not gonna just jump out and save her. He then decides, well, he uses his powers to make it to save her. So he opens. We get to see him use his heat vision for the first time, by the way, because he never used heat vision in the first movie. So he uses heat vision to open up, like, what is it, like the awning, right, from underneath the Daily Planet. So Lois will land on the awning, and then she will, bounce off the awning into like a food stall to break her fall, and she does. And then she looks up and she sees Clark still up there, like, oh my god, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, you're not Superman. And then she faints. Lex Luthor and Otis are in prison, and they escape with Tessmacher. So I guess she and Lex are just made up off camera after everything that happened. Okay. And they abandon Otis because she escapes with them in a hot air balloon. And when Luthor gets up, they're like, okay, Otis, your turn. And Otis is too fat. He keeps bringing down the balloon. So Lex is like, okay. And he just knocks the freaking ladder off and leaves Otis. Bye, Otis. And Lex uses a device he made in prison to find the Fortress of Solitude. Which is where they go. They go to the Fortress of Solitude. It's much better than the theatrical cut where they imply that they used the hot air balloon to get to the Fortress of Solitude. And this one, it's implied that they stopped the hot air balloon and then got, better equipment to then go and find the fortress, which I think is a lot better. They enter the Fortress of Solitude, and start looking around. The joke is that Miss Tessmacher needs to piss, and she can't find the bathroom. Okay. Then Lex ends up activating like the Jor-El hologram, and he ends up activating the one which talks about Zod, right? And Lex is now, he's very interested in finding Zod, right? These three criminals, they speak to him, right? They understand what Luthor goes through. So he's, very interested in, finding them. Speaking of them, they have now landed on the moon, where there's a group of astronauts there on the moon, probably to do the second, Earth moon landing. And they start to get their powers, right? Because the sun is now shining on them, so they can start to get their powers, and they kill the group of astronauts. And comes the fun line where they think that Earth is called Houston because the astronauts are saying, Houston, we have a problem. And they're like, that must be the planet Houston. Or Zod says the planet Houston, which is great. I love that. I will now forever call Houston Houston. So from there, they then, start flying to Earth. It's going to take them a while, but they start flying to Earth. So Perry White has now assigned Lois and Clark to go as newlyweds to a honeymoon suite because apparently it's like a scam at Niagara Falls. So they're deposes newlyweds to figure out if it's real or not. So Superman, so Lois is still iffy on if Clark is Superman or not, right? Even though she threw herself out of a building, and Clark was still up there, she's still, for some reason, like, oh, you could be Superman. Again, differences from the theatrical cut, right? Which is you get to see them enter the suite, and you get to see them in the suite a lot more in the theatrical cut. I did like there's a part in the theatrical cut that's there that I did like more, that I think would have been good in the Donner cut, which is like Clark's looking around the room and he's like, oh, they have complimentary, candy, complimentary, all this type of stuff. And he's like, well, Lois, what are we going to do about the sleeping situation? And Lois is like, Mr. Kent? And she pats the couch, the complimentary couch. And he's like, yeah, right. I like that scene. That's fun. So some stupid kid is playing around, by Niagara Falls, right? Like letting go of the banister and then, quickly catching before he falls because he's a moron and his parents are paying attention. Oh, God, you're at the Niagara Falls, people. Now, of course, obviously something like this would never happen because in real Niagara Falls, they have police officers and security watching to make sure nothing like this happens. But Clark is sent off by Lois to get a hot dog because she is hungry. And she asks for freshly squeezed orange juice, which is something that works in the theatrical cut, because in the theatrical cut, she mentions to Clark how she's, she read that, having freshly squeezed orange juice, it's great for you, right? So you don't get that in this one. But if you had the theatrical cut, that makes a lot more sense. The boy falls because he's a moron. Superman arrives, saves him, disappears, and Lois is like, huh, Superman. And Clark's not here. Later on, when she confronts him about this, Clark's like, you sent me to go get hot dogs. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry I had to go to the washroom. I can't help it. Right? She eventually is like, all right, I've had enough of this. She takes out a gun, and she shoots him. And Clark's like, damn it, right? And that obviously reveals he's Superman. And first off, when I first watched this for the very first time, I was like, what are you thinking, woman? What drastic decision have we made here? And then he's like, you realize you could have killed Clark Kent. And she's like, with a blank? Which, okay, it's like, that makes sense. And you obviously, if you think about it very quickly, you can realize, okay, yeah, she probably wasn't going to shoot Clark, right? So there's that. In the theatrical cut, there's the scene where instead of it being she jumps out a window, it's she throws herself into a lake and Clark doesn't save her. There's that scene. So after, it's been admitted he's Superman, he takes Lois to the Fortress of Solitude, where they have dinner, and it's implied they had sex. We all know for a fact that if that was true, Lois Lane would be nothing. She'd be a speck on Earth because Superman would have killed her while having sex. No. In the theatrical cut, it actually makes a lot more sense because they have sex after his powers are taken away. And I'm like, no, that makes sense because they're human. Superman, like, at full power, and Lois, she'd be dead. Oh my God. No way. In the comics, he was slightly depowered when they had sex to have baby John, So it's like, no way, dude. She'd be dead. After that, he then, asked Jor-El, can you remove my powers so I can stop being Kryptonian? Because I can't, I love this woman. And I want to dedicate my time to her. And I can't do that if I'm going around saving everyone. And Jor-El's, hologram is like, there's no going back if you do this. If you do this, this is it. Which is, of course, a lie. But if you do, if you do this, this is it. And Clark's like, I want to do it. And Jor-El then has him enter a chamber and bathes him in red sunlight to take away his powers. And Clark comes out human. So, meanwhile, the trio of Kryptonian mass murderers arrive on Houston, and they destroy a small town in Idaho, and after they find out, where the military gets their orders, which is from the president, they then go to the White House and they tell the president, if you kneel before Zod, it will save lives. I want to destroy everything after. So the president, under the condition that if he does this, Zod will leave the world alone, he kneels. Clark and Lois are driving back from the North Pole. No. They stop at a diner where Clark gets beaten up by a trucker for standing up for Lois, because the trucker's being a bit creepy to her, and Clark's like, excuse me, sir, you're in my seat. And then Clark's like, excuse me, sir, do you want to take this outside? He chose a weird time to be brave without having powers. And the guy takes a cheap shot at Clark, punches him in the back of the head when he's turned, and Clark starts bleeding. And it's a really good scene with him going like, that's my blood, because he's never bled before. The guy then continues to beat him up, and as Lois is nurturing Clark back up, the TV then shows the president of the United States saying that he has spoken to the other leaders in the world and they have surrendered control over to Zod. And Zod calls out for Superman, right? Because he's been told that, Superman's the one guy who can stop you. And, Superman sees this and he's like, oh my God, it's Zod, because obviously he has the knowledge that his father's told him. And he's like, I have to go back and I have to fix this. So he walks back to the North Pole. No, he would be dead. He would have died getting there. Even if he was alive, making it back to the fortress, his fingers would be like pitch black from the frostbite. No. So he starts pleading with his father's hologram to please give me back my powers. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to. I didn't understand. Right? The hologram of Jor-El says that, I can do it, but it would cause me to give the last of my life to you. And it would, render the Fortress of Solitude pretty much inoperable. But Jor-El's like, you are my son, so I will gladly do this for you again. I will gladly once again give my life for you. So he does that. The hologram of Jor-El dies, but Clark is back to being Superman. In the White House, Lex arrives and he says that, he can tell Zod how to get Superman. He also tells, Zod Superman's the son of Jor-El, and that makes Zod very intrigued. And Lex says, I know how you could find them. So he takes them to Metropolis and he's like, kidnap Lois. Superman loves her, right? She's the one you need. And he says he does all this in exchange for Australia. That's what Lex wants. He wants Australia. Superman arrives. We have a fight with Superman and all three of the Kryptonians, with them quickly realizing that the weakness of Superman is that he cares for the people, so they start endangering the citizens around them. So Superman's fighting them while also trying to save the civilians. Superman flies away, and Zod's like, he's a coward, he ran. And Lex is like, I think I know where he ran too. So they go to the fortress, bringing Lex and Lois with them. And Superman is there in the fortress, right? And they have Lois hostage, and they tell Superman, kneel before me, and all that type of stuff. And Superman's like, all right, we'll talk. Let's step into this chamber, which is, the crystallized chamber. So Zod tells Lex that, eventually we're just gonna kill you because you're useless to us now. And Lex then goes to Superman, starts cozying up to him, being like, oh, man, you think you know a guy, right? So Superman then whispers to Lex, get them into this chamber. It takes away their powers. And Lex is like, And he immediately goes to Zod and goes, don't go in there, General, it's a trap. So then Zod has Superman go in the chamber, because if you don't, we will kill Lois Lane. Superman goes in, and this is a great thing if you're paying attention. The red light is outside of the chamber in the entire fortress, and the inside of the chamber is normal, which is your tell of what is going on. So Superman steps out, he kneels before Zod, right? Zod extends his hand, saying, swear eternal loyalty to me. And Superman crushes his hand and throws him, and Zod goes falling into, I don't know, the eternal abyss, whatever. They don't exactly explain where that is. Non tries to fly at Superman, but his powers are gone, so he just falls into the abyss. Lois punches Ursa, sends her falling into the abyss. Then Superman and Lois, they have their kiss. Superman destroys the Fortress of Solitude. Who knows what the hell happens to Lex? I don't know. Um, then Superman does stupid thing. He spins around the Earth and restarts the past couple days so they never happen. So the Fortress of Solitude is there. He puts Zod, Ursa, and Non back into the Phantom Zone, so they're still stuck there. And everything he went through with Lois never happened. Lex is still in prison. And yeah, there's that. And then we get the scene where Clark goes back to the diner and he beats up the trucker for what he did. And then he just looks at everyone and goes, "Oh, I've been working out." And that's Superman 2. Yeah, the ending sucks. The ending is awful, dude. It's a bad ending because once again they did the whole he's just gonna reverse time thing. It's dumb. And then the trucker scene doesn't really make that much sense because now it's like they've never met him before, so this guy's just picking on him. Where in the theatrical cut it does make sense because what happens in the movie actually happens. He does the stupid mind erase thing with Lois, which is dumb. All right, I'm not defending that. That is stupid. But that at least means that the events of the movie did happen. We do have to live with that. Other than him just like, I don't like what happened here in the past couple of days. I'm just going to go back and fix it all. That's stupid. It is dumb. So both endings of this movie sadly suck. Carrying over from the first Superman movie where the ending was stupid. This movie, both the versions of this movie are dumb. But still, Superman 2, on the whole, is still a really, really good Superman movie. And unlike, the theatrical version, they actually have Jor-El in it because in the theatrical version they couldn't come to a deal with Marlon Brando to use his likeness, so they used the mom instead. She takes the place of Jor-El for a lot of stuff, which actually works fine as well. I mean, but it is very clear, like, oh yeah, we can't use Jor-El. So there we go. Superman 2, on the whole, great movie. The cast is great, right? Christopher Reeves is great, Superman, Mark Ketter's good, Gene Hackman's really good. He leans a lot more into the more comedy aspect of his character than the first movie where he had a bit of both. Now he's a bit more comedic. And I gotta say, the actor who plays Zod he's freaking great, dude. I loved him. He was awesome. Zod was like so fun in this one. There's a scene, by the way, where when they storm the White House, Zod takes a gun and just starts shooting the people for fun because he knows he can kill them, any other way. But he just takes the gun and he just starts shooting them for fun. That's freaking sweet. That's probably one of the greatest scenes ever filmed in all of mankind. Superman 2, I don't think it's as good as Superman 1. I think Superman 1's still better. And I gave Superman 1 a 10 out of 10. Even though there are problems with that movie, obviously there's plot holes and problems with that movie. But, just on a whole, I can watch that movie and just, it's so fun, right? Superman 2, I would say on the whole, taking both cuts into consideration, I would give it a 9 out of 10, right? Like I said, there's plot holes in both the movies, but I can put that aside and just enjoy them for what they are, which is pure Superman. And that's what I need. So that's Superman 2. Let me know what version you prefer, Superman 1 or 2. Let me know which one you prefer. And let me know which version of Superman 2 you prefer more. Do you prefer the Donner cut or do you prefer the theatrical cut? So yeah, that's going to do it for me. So thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you all next time.